We got a question from a longtime member of the audience that is in some ways 180 degrees the opposite of the kind of question we're used to dealing with in our own private lives and to some extent in our public lives as leaders of public opinion here on YouTube. I'm joking, but the stuff we talk about, both Melissa and I, it does have a really deep, really significant impact on the lives of a small number of people. And I wouldn't have it any other way. You know what I mean? I would rather have a profound impact on the lives of a small number of people than have a shallow impact on the lives of a large number of people. I think you're going to see that in my writing. If you read my book, if you read my essays, you know what I mean? That's what I'm going for. If you watch my YouTube videos, and as I now make the transition to being a filmmaker, I may make films that reach a large audience, but still there's this question of like them that have ears to hear, let them hear. It's going to be a small number of people in the audience who really get some kind of profound inspiration or get some kind of have a life-changing experience watching the film you make. Now, sorry, we're going to get to the question, and you could guess what the question is about from the title of this video already. But I got some fan mail just yesterday. A guy wrote into me and said that he's 37 years old, and it had never even occurred to him that he would quit playing video games. He watched my recent video. Talks about China and the legal changes in China that are discouraging people from playing video games for more than 3 hours. And he said, the way you reasoned that through in that video, it was totally convincing to him. It presented it from a new and different angle that he never thought about before. And he's now basically made up his mind that he's going to change his life very fundamentally and quit video games. And that it kind of means more coming from a 37-year-old man. He can probably look back at the last 20 years of his life and think about the impact that playing video games has had on him. And now he's looking forward to the next 20 years of his life of becoming a middle-aged man and then an old man. And he's making a serious decision that he's really influenced by. So, I realize that for some of you, these kinds of discussions, they may seem flippant and shallow. And if that's all you can get out of them, that's fine too. But, whether it's videos I've made talking about, smoking marijuana, talking about antidepressant drug use, criticizing other YouTubers, people like Anissian and Jacqueline Glenn, like kind of mainstream, seemingly shallow subject matter. I can guarantee you every single one of those videos reached just one or two people for whom it changed their life profoundly. Whether it reached a total audience of 1,000, 2,000 viewers, in some cases my videos have reached 10,000 people, there are just a few people in the audience for whom that's really the right message being delivered at the right time in the right terms that they can really relate to, and they change their lives accordingly. So yeah, one of my old catchphrases around here was, it's shallow and it's deep at the same damn time. And with talking about this stuff, title of this video, we're talking about love without sex and also sex without love. We're talking about decisions people make that really do have a deep, profound influence on their life, even if regarded in the short term, regarded in a very narrow sense, even if they may seem like the shallowest thing in the world, it changes your life forever. The way you think about these issues and the way you feel about these issues. Okay, so I'm now going to read the question from the audience. Okay. Question from a member of the audience. And okay, even the first few words here, will resonate with the intro I've just offered. So this is a woman who writes in. We're going to make this completely anonymous. We're not going to use anyone's real name. We're also not going to use their real jobs or geographic location or anything like that. She writes in and says, quote, "Hi, Eisel. I've been watching your videos for over 6 years, and they have had a major influence in my life. In some sense, I have seen you as a paternal figure, as, in some sense, I have never had a father in my own life. For the past 12 months, I've been in a relationship with a man who has all the admirable qualities I could ever dream of." And she here mentions some details about his education, his profession, his career. It's not actually telling me directly what those admirable qualities are, but nevertheless. She then goes on to say, "He wants to marry and have children with me. I enjoy his company greatly, but have zero physical attraction to him. In some ways, you could say that I am repulsed by him physically." New sentence. "I don't know what is the right thing to do. Any advice would be much appreciated." Now, look, I'm happy for Melissa to say as much or as little as she wants to, but like at this juncture, figuratively handing the mic over to you, You and I have laughed about this so many times. I think a lot of people presume that's the position you're in. Like they presume that you're someone who admires me intellectually, but that this is a kind of dry intellectual romance with an older man whom you feel no attraction to or very little attraction to. And that's really the opposite of the truth. So I just say like, no, a lot of people would not be bold enough. A lot of people in your own life, they wouldn't be bold enough to say that to you. Like to my knowledge, but your parents have never laid that on you. Your parents do interrogate her about this relationship, and fine.
Sure.
But like, I do think that one of the misperception about you is that you're a woman who chose to be with a man you found intellectually admirable, but who you don't feel attracted to. And no, this was a tremendously passionate romance where I swept you off your feet the first day we met, and Right. Yeah, I just say that's also part of the public perception versus reality in like setting up your commentary.
Some autobiographical details. So we got to know each other, and we had some conversations. And because I had read an essay that you wrote, that influenced you into thinking, yes, like we should meet. Because I had admiration and respect for his writing, that gave him some sense that I had respect for who he was as an intellectual. When that's true. But I first saw him speaking, I first saw him on YouTube, and, I had an attraction to him just naturally. It wasn't based on your writing explicitly. Well, it added to
and sexually. Naturally, it's a little too vague. But go on,
yeah, definitely. The sexual attraction was there and still is there. I'm not repulsed by you, and it's not like I'm overcoming repulsion by being in a relationship with you. It's that. Very much inspired by that. And I remember somebody at the time when I was planning on meeting you was saying that I was just thinking with my vagina. So, I had a lot of criticism from people for various aspects. Whether it was just
that's seriously, but the people who said that to you at that time, they were at least acknowledging that this was for you, like primarily or overwhelmingly sexual attraction. That it wasn't the fact that you had read my books or read my articles and like related to me in a dry intellectual sense as a
for me it was like, okay, I'm actually like for the first time in my life going after somebody because I'm sexually attracted to them, because I want to be with them in this way. So it was like very much a sexual awakening for me. So I mean I think that people obviously they find it uncomfortable to talk to me about it probably. But that is the reality.
This could be a 3-hour live stream, guys. Hit the thumbs up. I have so much to say about this, like inside out and backwards and upside down, like from many different angles.
And it really does relate to this question.
Yes.
Because, it's not that I had sex with my former boyfriend, like I was sexually active and I really enjoyed, like I wanted to have sex, but it was just like in a different way, because like I hadn't pursued that relationship. That was somebody who had really pursued me. And this was a different situation where I was like, I felt like for the first time I was like, okay, no, I'm going after somebody, that I really want to be with.
Well, I think too, I mean, maybe this is very hard for you to think through, but like, I don't know if you could imagine what it would have been like if you only admired me intellectually and didn't feel any attraction toward me. Now, look, but I mean, to give a real world example, I don't believe you're attracted to Gary Yourofsky. I don't believe you're attracted to Gary Francione, all the top Garys. Like we could mention, we could mention other like quote unquote intellectual leaders in the vegan movement that you know what I mean, you could have met up with at least. Like they might not have been interested in you. You know what I mean? But like, one of the questions is like, so I think you can tell me if I'm wrong. If you had only been interested in me intellectually, if there was only intellectual admiration, then I think you would have just tried to be friends with me. No, like isn't that fair to say? You would not have tried to pursue a sexual or even deeply personal relationship if it was just.
Well, that's how it started. When I first sent you a message, I actually had like a longer message in mind where I was like, I feel like such an affinity to you. Like I want to be friends. Like I want to do. It felt kind of weird though, given that I was 24 and he was in his 30s.
I could tell from the first email she ever sent to me, the like. Sexual interest was bubbling through the keyboard. You know what I mean? Just mentioning, but that's the reality. It was from the very first message she sent to me. I thought this woman's trying to say, I didn't know how serious she was going to be about it, but you could absolutely get the vibe coming through the email. Go on,
Okay, No, that's interesting. Get your perspective on that, because I know you have told me that, but still at the time I was just like, I mean, it's in a similar way, like that it's just been inspiring to hear you speak on so many issues and
well, look,
with such
I'm totally happy to just talk about our own autobiography for 2 hours. But the question from the audience, though, the parallel I'm trying to strike is this: for this woman who's in this situation, she can ask herself, wouldn't my life be so much better today? Wouldn't everything be better today if I had just become friends with this guy? Now, I'm saying this, so you, dear viewer, person who wrote this email, you may have never thought about it this way. You may have never stopped and reflected, what if this guy was just my friend? And if you've been together for 1 year, you've probably gotten used to him doing your dishes and going grocery shopping together. Like, you've probably become accustomed to many, many things and sharing your life that you would never do with a normal friend. Like, it's not that it's forbidden, but if someone's just your friend, you don't cooperate that closely. But if you respect someone intellectually or ethically, we're left to fill in the details here, and you respect their career and education, but you find them repulsive or completely unattractive, of course you should just be friends. And of course, for the past 1 year with this guy, you could have just been friends, and then you could be sleeping with someone else, and he could be sleeping with someone else who you actually have mutual chemistry with, you actually find attractive. So I just take it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to that needs to be said. If you are actually repulsed by somebody, that's a huge factor in like how much of that can change. But
okay, but that's, so I want to jump in there. That's where I feel I'm very different from other people. And so you tell me, you guys can write into me from the audience. If I really feel intellectual admiration for someone, I think in most cases I would then start to find them attractive. Now, I'm completely heterosexual, so this could never happen with a man. And, obviously there's some limit where a woman could be, so hideously ugly that that's impossible. But with a woman who's mediocre looking or a little bit ugly, I've talked about this in other videos in the past. It's very easy for me to imagine, and I've kind of felt this happen when let's say you're in a workplace relationship with someone who isn't your type, who isn't attractive to you at first glance, but you work with them and you see that they're intelligent, you see that they're honest, you see that they're hardworking, you see that they're not crazy. I'm especially interested in women who are not crazy. You start to see their redeeming qualities. And then for me, you perceive them differently, you feel differently about them. And then you start to feel sexual. So that's my experience, empirically of life, is that, and this is not mind over matter. It's that your attraction to someone reflects your totalizing judgment about them, your judgment about them in their totality, mind, body, and soul, everything known and unknown. And I would say the opposite. I remember when you and I first got together, you were uncomfortable with me talking about this. But there have been women who kind of started flirting with me or took it to one extent or another, who were gorgeous and where I was so attracted to them. But then as I found out more about who they were intellectually or ethically, I was completely turned off, and I turned them down. So I've had that. It's obviously it's the same mechanism. It's like, well, okay, I know who you really are, and that could create my attraction for someone who's unattractive at first glance, unattractive on the surface, but then also it can completely undermine my sense of attraction. It can demonstrate to me that I'm not attracted to someone whom I otherwise would be attracted to.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about where to go with this, because
I got 10 different directions.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot.
It's shallow and it's deep at the same damn time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Part of me is just inclined to talk autobiographically because, like, from my experience, I've talked to you about this, but I have, as I've gotten older, gotten used to accepting when I'm just repulsed by somebody, when I'm not attracted to somebody, and being frank about that, being honest about that. Whereas in the past, like, I really struggled with this, where I don't want to make the guy feel bad. Like, I don't want to reject somebody. This is something that I have, like, just felt guilty about. And actually, like, I know it's So yeah, I mean, it might be painful to reflect on this, but like how
I see what you mean now. Right.
Yeah.
So you mean in terms of the crucial step I alluded to before of we should just be friends.
Yeah.
Having the strength to say to someone, I like you intellectually, or maybe
Or
ethically, or maybe politically. There's
Yeah.
something we have going, but no, you're not attracted to them. No, right.
Yes. So, but this was how my first like relationship started, where I wasn't.
She's had two. I'm the second one. Go on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he was a very tall, very like large, imposing person, but he was very,
she has a type.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some ways. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. When I met him, he was like of normal weight, you know, like he was.
He later became very fat.
Yes, but he was a good-looking guy, you know. Like I had reasons to think he was cute and think he was like funny, you know, and nice. Like it's charming, you know. Like there were things about him that were positive, like that I liked about him a lot. But I like looking back on it, I know based on the attraction that I felt to other people, like it wasn't there initially that I was like, I wanted this guy, you know, like, so, but for a long time I grew to love him, you know, like I really love this person, over time, like when you get to know somebody. So it is, I really like the title of this video because it's reflecting on like this love and appreciation for somebody versus sex and sexual attraction.
Right. And like, but let's be clear, in our culture, in this period of time, it's very difficult for people to have non-sexual relationships or non-sexual friendships. And like, I'm sorry, but it is. And like, so you've now been with me for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Of the friends I have who actually talk to me, who actually make time to talk to me, during those 4.5 years, a huge percentage of them were women who either had tried to have sex with me in the past and gave up, like they were like failed suitors or something. There were women who wanted to be with me and gave up, and then we ended up as just friends. Or they were women to one extent or another were concealing the fact that they were still actively trying to have sex with me. And some of those friendships ended that way, where the woman like freaks out and like they reveal. I mean, I feel it would be an exaggeration to say that these women revealed that they're in love with me, but they reveal that they're trying to sleep and they're trying and failing to have a sexual relationship with me. And it's like, oh, well, when I said we were just friends, I meant it. You know what I mean? Like, no, like to me, these women, they were just my friend, you know? So like, you know, but this is not a humble brag. It's not. The point is like, you know, I made videos talking about this recently. I wish I had colleagues still today from my years being a scholar of Buddhism. I wish I had colleagues from my years being involved in humanitarian work. I could say I wish I had colleagues still from my involvement in anthropology, First Nations politics, First Nations languages, even just language teaching. You can meet really interesting people who are working in teaching English as a second language, teaching Chinese, learning Chinese. These are all interesting walks of life I've been in. And no, like most of the people who talk to me, like they're either women who wanted in the past to sleep with me and they still have that kind of tension and motivation, or like covertly or overtly, they still are. And sorry, and let's be real. So at different times in my life, this has come up. The men who talk to me, like in my life as a whole, a significant number of those men were homosexual or bisexual. And they like that was a suppressed element of their interest in me. And believe me, I had absolutely no interest in them that way. Like there was no, I'm completely heterosexual, but where that's partly motivating them. So this is a digression, but it's not really, because the point is, you know, when Melissa was talking about the kind of strength of character you need to say to a dude, like, look, we should just be friends. Like, you know, whatever, no matter how much you like him or admire him, however much intellectual compatibility there is, that there isn't this kind of attraction. There isn't this basis for a romance or a marriage or raising kids together. That takes a kind of strength at that moment. And I mean, I think it's fair to say, if you wait until after you've had sex with them, it's too late. You can never do. Very few men would be able to transition from a sexual relationship to being just friends. And I knew, okay, when I've known women who did that, especially like our culture. I mean, if you're talking about some totally foreign culture, I don't know, but like I've always been like really, is that really what's going on, or are you still meeting up with this guy and sleeping with him once in a while? Like what,
Yeah.
like to make the transition to being just intellectual colleagues and friends, after the fact, if
I
not
agree with you.
impossible, it's almost impossible.
Once this line has been crossed, it's very difficult to
Okay,
to retreat.
And to me,
oh wait, no.
And to me, the exceptions. So to me, the exceptions prove the rule. My mother had a friend, and he had been her boyfriend, like back when my mom was like 20 or 21 or something. And then like they became friends again when she was like 65. No, well, at least the dude, like when they were old, like decades had passed, and they'd like been like, okay, like there are some exceptions where like in your 60s or something, somebody who used to be a sexual connection comes back into your life as just a friend. Like I admit, like, and legitimate, I think also in business that can happen. But whoa, so if the woman doesn't have the strength of character to friend zone the guy, that's the term, early, at the right juncture, then probably she is facing a fork in the road where it's like either this person is a sexual connection or a sexual partner forever, or they're cut out of your life and you never hear from them again. And I think that's this woman's situation. The dear viewer, the person who's writing in asking for this. I think there is probably so she says she's lived with him for 12 months,
right?
And he's wanting to get married and have kids. I don't think you can go from that to let's just be friends,
right?
Or if you do, it's decades later. Like maybe just one decade. Maybe he goes and gets married to someone else and has kids with them. You get married to someone else, and then you can be maybe still incredible in our culture, incredible. Okay, you got a whole. You say anything. You don't have to follow up what I say, because there are a lot of different directions.
Yeah,
say whatever you want to say, but
But no, I think that probably is the case. Like even if you once,
okay, I'll read. If you got no rush, I'm going to read some stuff from the audience. Okay. You guys, by the way, we have 32 people in the audience. If we have 32 thumbs up, that'll help more people discover it and join it while it's going on. So Brendan Williams says, this is one of my favorite topics. Eisel helped me to quit drinking, be hypercritical of the time I spent playing video games, and has had a profound and lasting influence on his life. So thanks for writing in, Brendan. Yeah. I said before that there's this small number of viewers. Like if 2,000 people watch one of my videos, there might be just 1 or 2 people for whom this is the turning point. But there are more people for whom watching my videos is deepening and reinforcing their reflections on these things. Like there are people who already had quit drinking alcohol before they watched my videos, but then watching the videos and really kind of philosophizing about it, they realize how significant it is and what the commitment means, So there is this reinforcing effect for people quitting video games, quitting alcohol, all these things, reflecting on it in this way and realizing how much it means and how much, in a sense, it's worth the price. It's worth the cost, because there is a cost. There's a real sacrifice. Definitely. I mean, to use this example, if you quit drinking alcohol, that may cut off your access to, in our culture, it cuts off your access to a lot of sexual partners, just the scenarios in which you meet people and so on and so forth, Okay, so Nacho is a female viewer, says, quote, repulsion, in my opinion, usually only occurs if it's someone who's either morally or ethically repugnant, or if they have poor hygiene. I really disagree. I really, really, really disagree. This gets down to the question of what is nature and what is artifice in a very disturbing way. I just read a bunch of different perspectives on the marriage of Lee Harvey Oswald. So Lee Harvey Oswald, he is famous for his involvement in the assassination of JFK. As he put it, he was a patsy, but he is remembered in history because he was somehow involved or implicated in the shooting of the President of the United States, JFK. But every single detail of his marriage, his dysfunctional marriage, was recorded for history for this reason, including we saw the transcripts of Russian spies who had recorded his conversation. Like, they had audio recordings and you got to read them fighting. Fighting about, oh, did you mop the floor today? No, he didn't. Like really this kind of detail about this relationship. Yeah. Now, one of the things that his wife or his widow says, because she's interviewed after Lee Harvey Oswald is dead, she said, he wasn't a bad looking guy, but she always hated his scent. She couldn't stand the smell of him. She felt repulsed by him. She hated the fact that he had narrow shoulders. She couldn't stand the sight of his body when he was naked. And, this thing about the smell, that he had this distinctive or bad smell about him and so on. And, there were other things she mentioned. Some of the things were more intellectual or what have you, that she really just never felt it was a good match. She didn't feel that they were compatible. Now, a lot of people will leap to claim that that's nature, that that's biology, right? But subjectively in your real life, you can never know, right? You can never know, am I taking something that's actually like an intellectual analysis or perception on my part? Like, is this something are there intellectual, not even, I'm going to say intellectual qualities that person has that I'm perceiving and analyzing, and then I'm kind of emotionally, experiencing this through their scent, but the way I think about somebody is the way I feel about somebody, right? And it's even the way I perceive them and the way I smell them. And you can never really extricate these things. Now I'll give you an example. Not all women feel this way, but we talk about this in relation to some YouTubers. There are some men on YouTube who admit openly that they pay to sleep with prostitutes. Now, ladies, we got some ladies in the audience here. I don't know, how would you feel if you're in love with a man, you're pursuing a man, and then you find out that he's been sleeping with prostitutes, not every week, but he occasionally sleeps with prostitutes, and that during your courtship with him, even he has sometimes met up with and had sex with a prostitute. Like let's say during the first 2 weeks you were dating him or getting to know him, that he was, I can see from the expression of your face, right? Oh, well, maybe you never thought about this before. Now, I can totally imagine from a woman's perspective, like, okay, I used to feel attracted to you. I used to find you attractive and intelligent and even kind of morally good. And now I feel repulsed because I know something about who you are ethically. And I know something about who you are intellectually. I know something about you that makes you to me seem untrustworthy. Now, guys, so you may know this. There are all kinds of things I would love to abolish on planet Earth. I'd love to abolish alcohol and gambling and eating meat. I'm vegan. I think everyone should be vegan. I have never talked about abolishing prostitution. I do think it's inevitable that we have to have some prostitution on planet Earth. Anyway, to me, it does not belong in the category of things to be eradicated from the human experience. However, I can imagine the way you perceive someone and even what they smell like to you completely changing when you find out about this side of their character, this side of their behavior. And that it's, and it relates to how he treats you as a woman. You know what I mean? To me, there's a lot there, Now you could probably talk to some women who would say they're completely comfortable with their husband sleeping with prostitutes, and that he slept with prostitutes before he got to know her, or that he still does now, that he spices up his sex that way. Maybe some women feel that way, but again, I'm saying this as a man, and I understand everything that goes into it. I see how that could totally change the way you feel about somebody, and anyway, and the competitive instincts that are there and the evaluative instincts. So look, this is a response to what Nacho said, where you say, revulsion only occurs if it's someone who's either morally or ethically repugnant, or if they have poor hygiene. I don't think so. And again, Nacho, I don't know how many partners you've had. I don't know what experience you've got. So Frida's comment is following up, so I might as well read it now. Mm-hmm. Frida says, quote, "I don't know if there's something biological about having repulsion for someone. Sometimes you don't like how someone smells, and they could be nice, but it's just difficult to understand the smell." I think also, I don't know to what extent this is my rational mind, like creating the illusion of something that's instinctual or biologically real. But I made a video about a year ago talking about inbreeding. Sorry, maybe it's only been 6 months. Feels like a year ago. Talking about the genetic problems that arise from, getting married to your own cousin, this kind of thing. I always felt that I was repulsed by women who looked like they could be related to me. And for me growing up, that was mostly Italian women who genetically probably have nothing in common with me. But there were Italian women around who looked like they could be my sister or looked like they could be my cousin, like the just things about their appearance. And I always felt, I felt like this. And there were other guys for whom Italian women were the height of beauty and whatever. But again, I can try to reify that, I can try to rationalize that as if that's an instinctual and genetic reality. It's a response. But dude, you know, you will never be able to know yourself that way. You'll never be able to pin that down. And, you know, to what extent is it instead, you know, that I felt repulsion to these Italian women because, for example, they weren't intellectual enough for me. You know what I mean? Like they no offense, in my neighborhood, I did grow up around an Italian community. They mostly watched football and soccer. I mean, you know, and ice hockey. It was not the most erudite, you know, subculture, you know. To what extent is that just a rationalization of other things that are going on when you evaluate someone, you know? Anyway, sorry, babe. You want to, again, you do not have to follow up on what I'm saying. You do not have to follow up on what the people in the audience are saying. You can take it in any direction you want to take it or respond to the original question.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I think you covered that pretty well. I mean, I could go on to talk about scent and repulsion that way. Like, I do think there's something to that.
You can tell me though. I mean, you know, do you feel you have a type and that I'm your type? Because I think that's
I just say like when I mentioned the features of my ex, you said like, oh
there's some things in common, right?
Some things in common, right? But I guess this kind of ties into what I was saying earlier too, where when I was younger, like I had a really difficult time rejecting people, and especially like rejecting somebody who was expressing like romantic interest in me. Like this was even going back to like middle school, like when I was 13, like a guy asked me to be his girlfriend and like I felt bad saying no. So I said yes. And then like later on that day or like the next day, I was like, you know what? No, I'm not actually interested in being your girlfriend, you know, like, and I had never, you know, I was just a kid, you know, I was like 12 or something. But yeah, even at that starting point, like I remember like afterwards thinking like, what's the matter with you? Like, why can't you just say what you actually feel? Why can't you just like reject somebody? Whether it's,
but that's some middle-aged shit. Saying what you actually feel. That's what's so great about being middle-aged, bro. Like when you're middle-aged, you go through life saying what you feel, okay? When you're 15 years old, saying what you feel is a fucking mountain to climb. No, like for real, bro. No, but for real, I love being middle-aged. You know, my life is wonderful as a middle-aged person. But
okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, even for me, I know people like perceive me as super self-confident because I am. But like, what do you think? You think for me at 15, it was really easy for me to articulate, like even to a friend in private or to my parents or something, how I feel about a girl or what I think? No, man. I mean, you know, you struggle and struggle and struggle. And then at some point in the struggle, it becomes easy. But no, I mean, even being honest in your own thoughts about these things, you know, is, you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, you asked the question about, do you think I'm your type? Like, I think that there's a lot of what you've talked about recently about sexual attraction, about attraction to somebody has to do with feeling like you trust the person, that you know, like a tattoo artist, somebody that you feel like comfortable, like if you're hurt, they'll be there for you and like they'll care about you. Like that really matters fundamentally. Like I think of you as somebody who's a very caring, like, you know, you care about me and I can tell you care about people, like people that you know.
Right.
So that's really attractive. So like I know that's not a type. So I mean like
no, but it's a typology. I mean it is a type of type.
Right.
Well, for me, I mean, one of the biggest changes in my life. So again, this has to do with perceiving things as biologically real. So, you know, Melissa has met my ex-wife. I'm divorced. If you guys don't know, I had a wife before Melissa. And Melissa is my presumptive next wife, in case you we'll see how it goes. I think she likes me, but we've been together for 4.5 years. We might as well be married, but we're not legally married. But you know, this has been going on for so long. So, but there was a stage many years ago when Melissa actually met my ex-wife face to face, and Melissa didn't pick up on it at the time because my ex-wife didn't say it in a gauche way. But my ex-wife seeing Melissa in person, Melissa did look gorgeous on that particular day, like just her style of dress and everything. You know, I mean, it was a good face day, it was a good hair day, it was a good body day, and everything, you know, and she was in a nice outfit. But I remember my ex-wife like said to me, you know, politely, but she was like guffawing, like this girl isn't your type at all. You know what I mean? Like, so again, she didn't say it. It really wasn't improper. Melissa didn't feel insulted or whatever. But I
barely remember it.
Yeah, no. We talked about it after. Yeah, no, I pointed out, she was like, when she said this, that was what's going on. And again, I'm not faulting my ex-wife for saying that. That was just her being sincere. But it was like, what? Like, you chose this girl, because it just was, she had a sense of what my type was and what it was after. She was like, oh, like, this girl isn't your type. Now, of course, you can now list off a bunch of ways in which, like, intellectually, morally, and like there are, and even culturally, by the way. So culturally is another interesting category in which Melissa is exactly my type. But like what I've been able to experience now I'm 42 years old, is that what you think is your type actually changes. And it actually changes in response to your own positive experience. And I'm going to be blunt. It changes in response to your sexual experience, not movies, not watching rap music videos. No, it's changed in response to the actual sex you have had. So like what I find now, and this has been true since like the first couple months we were together, is that now in real life, the women I am most attracted to literally are women that remind me of Melissa, right? Which in a sense, this is like biologically counterintuitive. Like, you might think, oh, well, don't you want to compensate by being with a fat woman or something? Like something that's just really different. Like, oh, well, if you're going to cheat on your girlfriend, why wouldn't you cheat with something that's, just a totally different type of beautiful woman or something that's like the opposite extreme. But no, I'm really aware of that. And it feels like biological reality. It feels like, oh yeah, this has always been my type. This is always what I'm after. But it's, I mean, again, you can't extricate what's instinctual from what's intellectual and from what's empirical. Like now, empirical, I just mean that you actually experienced this. So I'm just being real with you. Like before I was with Melissa, how many people had I ever met who has Melissa's hair color? Like she has this kind of rare hair color. It's not blonde and it's not brown. It's kind of a halfway in between. It's an unusual hair color. And whether or not you can pick it up on the camera, you know what I mean? I would have never said that. Like, oh yeah, this is my hair color. But like now that I've been with Melissa, like for real, I respond to, and I'm like interested in like I feel myself like perk up like on this instinctual level when there's a woman who has this kind of hair color. No, I've said this to you also, even like the shape of your nose, because there are other women who have this kind of shape of nose. Like, oh, so like, dude, when you get to my age and you've been through what I've been through, and let's be real. I can remember being in Thailand and Laos and feeling like none of these women are attractive to me, which is true. It was incredibly rare for me to see a woman who was even a little bit attractive to me there. Like I've never been into Asian women, and thinking like, well, I've got to like try to train myself to find these people attractive. You know what I mean? Like I've got to kind of change my mentality because this is it. Like now I'm living out here permanently. Like this is like, I'm not able to date black women. You know what I mean? I did growing up where I grew up. I did, I did like, black women. I did like women who were also like Latina or something. Like all kinds of growing up where I grew up. And she's seen my neighborhood in Toronto. We had a lot of immigrants from Brazilians and people from the Caribbean and stuff. One of the first girls I got involved with was from Trinidad. So she was of mixed ancestry from the Caribbean and stuff. So, you come out of that background and, I know there are all these white guys who are in Thailand, especially because they idolize, the way Thai women look. And I don't at all. So like my point being, when you go through that, it feels biologically real. It feels instinctual, but instead a lot of it is empirical and is intellectual. It's more intellectual than you think it is. So I just say, we've been saying this almost as like a critique of the question, but like, no, which is meaningful. Like it is in part like a response to the question, but like, I think the point is, if you really know this dude, and in a perfect world, you would have gotten to know him just as friends, not sleeping with him, not, living in the same apartment with him. But like, if you've gotten to know this dude and you do have intellectual admiration for him, and you have some kind of ethical appreciation for him, you feel he's a good person as well as a smart person, right? And you still feel repulsed. You're still not attracted. Like you haven't started to perceive him as attractive because of those redeeming qualities. Then like it seems to me you're 100% certain this can never work. You know what I mean? Because like if you just met someone, if you only known somebody for 1 week, 2 weeks, something like this, and it's like, well, I'm not really attracted to them, but I totally understand. You could say, well, let's give it a chance. Let's see how it goes. Maybe as I learn to appreciate them, I'll start to feel attracted because of those qualities. Okay, jump on the mic.
Yeah, no, I want to jump on that. What you're saying, like maybe over time, like I'll start to feel like attraction to this.
Right.
So I think there is a kind of narrative in our culture that if you work really hard, that you'll win somebody's heart.
Oh yeah, right? The hard work narrative.
Yeah, right. Like if you are very
that's the incel narrative. Oh boy, that's the incel trap. Go on.
Is it? Okay.
Oh yeah, go on.
So this is the incel narrative. If you're kind enough, if you're sweet enough, like, you know,
right.
But look, okay. So in terms of like physical characteristics, right? The first person that I like was like just heartbroken over in high school. Like he was tall, but he was blonde and blue eyed. Like, you know, like this, it's not like I have a type for like dark hair, you know, but I might think that because like, you know, I'm super attracted to Isel. So I have a thing for guys that have dark curly hair. Like, you know, no, well, I don't think that's really it. It had to do with his characteristics. It had to do with just how he presented and that kind of thing. Of course, like totally different person now, and I'm a totally different person now. But you know, like I'm just thinking of that idea where like he didn't even have to do anything for me specifically. It was just that I was attracted to him for whatever, you know, combination of reasons that I wasn't able to really analyze at that time. You know, I was young, but you know, being a teenager, you don't have the self-reflection, and it's very rarely you actually talk to somebody about this stuff. Like, you know, people might say like, oh, you have a crush on this guy, like why? What do you like about him or something? But it's not the same thing as like having this kind of philosophical attitude to like actually discussing physical attraction between people,
right? And
being honest with yourself about who you find physically attractive. And there's a lot wrapped up into it too. Like what? So like I feel a lot of judgment on me if I were to say that like there's a lot of this in the incel culture, like, oh, well, women are only interested in men who are wealthy. Like, what if I said like, yes, I have a thing for wealthy men, like,
right? So
there would be a lot of hate directed towards me if that were the case, like if that was my type, you know, like, so being honest about that.
Right.
Or if my, you know, any number of things that they say like, oh, well, women don't date anyone under 6 feet. Like that's a thing on Tinder. Like if you are under 6 feet tall, then this is, men feel like they're at a disadvantage biologically, but I don't think that's true because, you know, I have been attracted to people who are shorter.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it's not,
but look, you know, I do think we have to be kind of warm-hearted and good-natured and good, you know, have generosity of spirit in making judgments about other people. However, I do legitimately think you can judge someone by their sex life, by the choice they make in life. And I think a great example of this is Napoleon Bonaparte. Like if you want to draw conclusions about the ethical and political character of Napoleon, his sex life is a great window into who he really was as a man. And you know, it also explains things about him politically and religiously, you know, so on and so forth. So, you know, I would be a complete hypocrite if I sat here and said like, oh, you can't judge someone because this is what they're into sexually or this is what no, it's a really meaningful, really worthwhile way to judge someone and to understand someone is to look at the choices they make in their sex life. Now, again, you do have to be, you know, have generosity of spirit. You have to be warm and understanding and think about them charitably and think sympathetically and think about if you were in their position, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt and think through, you know, charitable interpretations, not just the most harshly condemning interpretation of why they've done what they've done. But, you know, the title of this video has 2 parts, talking about love without sex. We're also talking about, you know, sex without love.
Right.
And, you know, we both do judge people harshly for that. And we talk about that a lot because it comes up in life. Like, you know, you're after this person just for the sex, just for their body, just because they're hot, just because they're attractive. We're dealing with the opposite in this video primarily. But I mean, again, you'd be a hypocrite if you're like a critique of, if you criticize only that side of the coin and you don't deal with the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is,
Yes, we have talked about that. And definitely, I really appreciate having gone through this with you because the very like immature view of sex and relationships too. Like, I don't think that I don't have respect. Okay, how can I say this better? So if you are just interested in somebody because of their physical attractiveness, you know, that shouldn't be the only basis. That can't really sustain a relationship. And that, you know, if you want to live the rest of your life with this person, if you want this person to be a part of your development as in your career and your educational background and everything like that, it's not just going to be about their physical attractiveness.
Right.
And well, you may feel very, very strongly attached to somebody and interested in them in this way, but if you don't like connect on these other levels, then yeah, it is.
And ultimately, I mean, there's a pragmatic critique of that behavior. Like you can look at the life of Lee Harvey Oswald and say, well, you got with this woman just because she was attractive.
Right.
And you were totally incompatible in every other way, including just cigarette smoking. He was trying to get her to quit smoking. She was a chain smoker. You know, okay. So like there were really, obviously you only cared about the fact that she was a hot blonde, and you overlooked all of these terrible, you know, warning signs that you were not going to be able to work as a marriage at all. There were numerous, you know, with that thing. Okay, so there's a pragmatic critique of that, but I think there's also a more profound personal critique, which is this tells me something about you. If you are someone who only cares about how hot somebody else is, how physically attractive they are, whether objectively or subjectively, whether it's that they're hot, you know, in a sense that's socially recognized, like on Instagram, a lot of people think they're attractive, or it's just subjective. Like you may personally be attracted to very fat people who are not popular on Instagram. It's not a socially endorsed form of beauty. It's not the social beauty method, beauty standard. But for you personally, then that's all you care about. You know that this, again, we're willing to criticize Napoleon for his sex life. We have to be willing to criticize ourselves. Do you want to jump in, or you simply got something?
Yeah. Well, okay. The thing that we have talked about before that I'm trying to express is that, you know, what do you view? Do you view people just as prostitutes, basically? Is this how you view romance and love? Somebody that you can use for your own sexual gratification, use in a kind of selfish way that like this, you know, I have this desire to have sex with somebody, and it could be anybody that I find beautiful, rather than like, is there something more to that person that you admire? And so, yeah, this is, you know, I don't want to seem stuck up for this, but yeah, like if there isn't something deeper than just sexual attraction, then I don't view it as positively. And I've had to get over that because, you know, in contrast to what you were saying, like where some people think that we just have an intellectual relationship and I'm not sexually attracted to him. Obviously, that was a huge part of why I, you know, our romance is that I was, you know, very much interested in you sexually. And, you know, I'm not going to be ashamed of that and not going to pretend like that didn't play a role, because it did, especially at the beginning, you know. And,
well, right. So I just want to say, I had a friend, some of you will remember this YouTuber. There was a friend of mine who was called American Unicorn. And she was a member of the Mormon religion. She's not anymore. She lost her faith. She quit. But she was like super serious about the Mormon religion right up until she cracked and quit. But I remember even her talking about this, about sexuality in marriage. And she said she talked about it with her own father. And her father said to her, look, if you don't want to have sex with someone, then they should be your roommate, not your husband. Like, no, like, you know, even within that repressive religious context, it was like, no, like, you know, marriage is about sex. Love is about sex.
Wow.
Sexual attraction. Yeah. Sexual attraction.
Even somebody in the Mormon faith.
And she had considered marrying a guy who was a lawyer. He was quite successful, and he was apparently, I mean, according to her account, he was intelligent and he had other redeeming qualities, but she did not feel attraction towards him. You know, it didn't, and no, she didn't have sex. She was part of a religion where there was no sex before marriage anyway. I don't know if she even kissed someone before she got married, but she had very, very little to zero experience, but she had to consider that seriously as a suitor, as a possible match. And, you know, that's I think why she was having this conversation with her dad. She really decided, no, she should wait for someone who was really sexually compatible with her. Now, the actual marriage that ensued was a complete disaster, which, you know, there's a lot of material about that in the internet, actually. So I'm not outing her when I say that actually there was a lot of discourse about how rocky her marriage was that ensues. You could still, if you really want to Google around, you can find out about her struggles in marriage. But she did make that resolution. Now, I mean, that, you know, if you wanted to, you could just have a mic drop on the video there and just say, look, you know, is this about friendship, or is this about, you know, love and marriage and what have you. But of course, you know, reality is much more complicated than that. So you were just talking about the obverse meaning the other side of the coin, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you and I both agree that people shouldn't treat one another like prostitutes.
Right.
You know, you know, I try to be sex positive. You know what I mean? I mean, we can still say, you know, isn't it a wonderful thing if people can come together and enjoy having sex with each other when maybe that's all there is to be enjoyed? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or that's all you got. You know what I mean? That's all you've got to share. That's all you've got to, you know, take from one another. It's, you know, like even if you just look at that as a non-optimal, if you've got lemons make lemonade, you know, kind of thing. Well, here's the flip side. What if all you've got in your life is love without sex? What if all you've got is a marriage with or a relationship with someone where, you know, so look, my point is, even if we're going to say it's bad, we still have to kind of admit it. There's a kind of legitimacy to it. In an imperfect world, you can have love without sex. You can jump in here. I've got something more to say, but I can hit pause.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, in addition to that, there is in sexuality and human sexuality, there is a certain amount of objectification that is just that I for a long time didn't want to accept. I wanted to accept that love and sex were part of some higher spiritual, unreal thing, like that there was something really connecting you to this person that's not just the body, not just physical. And in this way, like I want it, like I think some people will like try to overcome this repulsion. And then getting back to the question that was asked, you know, like that, oh well, am I really that shallow that because I don't get this very strong sexual attraction to somebody, or I'm actually repulsed to them, that even though they have all these other characteristics that I admire, even though they have all these other positive things about them, am I that shallow that I'm going to ignore those things and instead focus on this one thing, this one part of our lives, the sexual thing? So yeah, but it has taken some getting used to that. Like, yes, there is a certain amount of objectification that just happens. Like you have to be like sexually interested in them, like in their body, in who they are as a person. Is some amount of that. I mean, you can tell me if you disagree with it. It'd be interesting to hear. Like,
I want to respond with an anecdote. Now, I'm intentionally changing some of the geography and details here, and you'll see why. But there was a woman, and let's say she was 32 years old and married, and let's say she'd been married for 5 years. Like she'd been married for a significant length of time, but not forever. So let's say she's 32 years old. She's married. Let's say she lived in Colorado. So some of these are details I don't actually remember. I don't remember exactly how many years, you know, and, you know, she started talking to me because she was vegan and she was a fan of the channel. And I just say, from my perspective, she was a really good friend and I really appreciated having her friendship. We just talked about normal real life stuff. We talked about some of the things I was researching and making YouTube videos about, and we talked about just normal real life stuff. But I really did value her as a friend. But she and I were just friends. Now, we stopped talking. She decided to stop talking to me when she basically admitted to herself and admitted to me that she was falling in love with me, or she was really obsessed with me. And this was like, for her, this was really a kind of sexual obsession, which for me, it wasn't, but you know, that's okay. But her situation was this, and the relevance to this conversation. And by the way, I don't know if I'll ever hear from her again. You know, again, just as friends, whatever, I really would like to hear from her again. But for her, I think she felt that this was destroying her life. She was sinking into some kind of obsessive set of behaviors towards me, which by the way, I couldn't perceive. Like, I mean, you know, it's at her end of the wire. Like, you know, I don't know what's going on her end. But, you know, as far as her conversations with me or something, there wasn't anything disturbing or obsessive about it, you know, that I could see from my perspective. But, you know, when people tell you that, believe them. You know, for all I know, she's got a voodoo doll at her stabbing a voodoo doll or something. You know, you got to take those things seriously when people share that with you. Okay, but this is her situation. Okay, she was married to a guy who, in my opinion, looked better than John Venus. Okay, so we had John Venus, which I'll just use. He was a really good-looking male bodybuilder type. Now, it wasn't his career, but that's what he looked like. So obviously, a lot of people looking at this scenario, if they knew all the people involved, would say, why is this woman even interested in Aysel Mazard, and let alone getting obsessed with him or falling in love with him or something, when you are married to this unbelievable example of male fitness, male beauty. I mean, he had a handsome face too, but I mean, obviously from the neck down, this guy's body was the product of a lot of very hard work. So if you're my friend in real life, some people watching this are my friends in real life. I very rarely ask questions. I'm not nosy with my friends. I don't ask questions that dig into their business. I kind of let my friends tell me these kind of personal things in their own time. And by the way, that sometimes creates tension with my friends because they ask like, oh, well, why aren't you interrogating me and asking for details? Because they expect their friends to be nosy. But what she said to me about her marriage simply was, there is absolutely zero sex. And, I said something like, well, come on, what does zero mean? Do you mean once a week? Do you mean once a month? Like zero means different things to different people. She was like, no, zero times per month. There is zero sex in this marriage. Okay. So what I'm getting at here, and this is a vivid way of describing it, how attractive someone is to you, how attracted you are to them, as well as how objectively attractive. Like I'm sure if they show off together as a couple in public, people would say, oh, wow, what a good looking couple and what a good looking guy and whatever. They can go to the beach and he can show off his muscles. She may be the envy of other women. Like other women might think, oh, wow, it must be amazing to be married to this bodybuilder type guy. Okay. And the reality is zero sex. The point is how attracted you are to someone is a completely separate variable from the quantity of sex, and it's a completely separate variable from the quality of sex, right? This is true both from a man's perspective and from a woman's perspective. I think there are a lot of stereotypes that like this is only a problem women have or something. No, sex can be bad for men too. You know what I'm saying? Sure. So how attractive someone is to you, whether or not you feel attracted to them, separate category, separate set of questions, separate set of criteria. Now, I'm just going to close this anecdote by saying, like I was amazed to hear this. And also, I mean, in my mind, I mean, given her age, so again, this is a made up number. Let's say she was 32. I honestly don't remember, but whatever. She wasn't some young kid in this marriage. My perspective completely was like, oh, well, it's just a matter of time until you divorce him. Like I didn't say that to her. I didn't ask her like, so when are you getting divorced? But like in my mind, I just think, oh, okay, well, like again, it's just like, well, if there is actually zero sex, you didn't get married to live like a Buddhist monk or something. Yeah. Like this can't possibly. Now, I take it that is not her perspective. I take it, even though again, she became kind of infatuated with me or whatever, became obsessed with me. I take it she feels that she can make this marriage work. And that is love without sex or some kind of relationship without sex. Two things really briefly. So my most recent video was talking about bodybuilders and the side effects they get. I mean, two theories about why that relationship had no sex. One theory is, of course, the guy could be a repressed homosexual. It could be that he's a very good looking guy, but he doesn't want to admit to himself that he's actually homosexual rather than heterosexual. Of course, that exists, possible. But another possibility is that he's a bodybuilder with experience using testosterone boosting drugs that mess with your hormone levels as a man. It is very, very common. A lot of bodybuilders refer to this being shut down temporarily or permanently, meaning they can't get an erection at all. And I read recently when I was doing some fact checking for one of my videos, I read a guy's account of just being on SARMs, SARMS, SARMs. It's a competitor with steroids. It's an alternative to steroids, another class of this type of drug. And he was just describing completely matter-of-factly losing the ability to have an erection at all for months at a time and so on. And these guys, they get used to, playing those games with those rules. So I just say it is possible that was a biologically real problem the guy had. And hey, coming back to the title of this video, it's possible he wasn't attracted to her. It's possible for him also. It's maybe none of these. Maybe he's not gay. Maybe he's not, shut down from using testosterone boosting drugs or whatever. Maybe he doesn't want to have sex with her. Maybe, you know, like for all the reasons we've been philosophizing about in this video. So we got to humanize and sympathize with his perspective too, because it takes two to tango. It takes two people to not have sex. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not related to this part of,
you know, any direction you want to take it. Yeah.
But no, I had a thought when you were talking about how somebody who's with a bodybuilder, like they might wonder how they could become infatuated with somebody like Isel.
Right.
And other people have directed this to me too. Like, oh, well, you were with a younger man, like, and you're now going to be with not younger than me, but a man who was relatively young, and you're going for somebody who's so much older than you. Like, what is the deal here? And like, you know, a lot of people will try to just like generalize and say like, oh, my type is I'm into older men, or like my type is you know, I'm into this or that. A lot of people just want to make assumptions about you, and you know, it's fine. You know, it's kind of human nature to kind of wonder about these things, like where these things come from. But like, so yeah, in this response, like, you know, if you're with somebody, you know, why are you attracted to this person? And yeah, it's just a very, like, I think it's just a not very understanding of human nature, that like, yes, you can be in a relationship with somebody, but be sexually infatuated with somebody else. You can be interested in somebody else for various reasons, and then you become sexually interested in them. Like, it's just, it happens. that's human nature, you know? So yeah, I think that, especially, you know, given that I'm in this position where I'm attracted to you, like I can understand how somebody would become infatuated with you, and even sexually obsessed, you know, like it happens. Like, it's sometimes it's not really like something that can be explained just by type or because of, you know, a logical reason. There's a lot of this that is just illogical, and and for that reason, I think it messes with people's heads. Like, well, if this is so irrational, so illogical to me, I can't understand why you do this. And it's frustrating for like both sides then, like for that person that is being interrogated, like how you could be interested in this person. But it's also like frustrating for the other person that seems to be so confused. It's like, well, sorry, like, I mean, it's attraction, you know, like, can't help it. It depends on, I mean, of course, there's one thing to be attracted to somebody, but it's another thing to act on it, right? It's getting back to this point of like,
look, if you I would compare. So look, you're really vaguely alluding to the people who kind of judge and dismiss this relationship, either in your life or random people on the internet.
Yes.
But there is a big difference between not understanding something and refusing to understand something because you don't want to understand it. And I think the easiest way to illustrate that is racism. So, you know, when I was studying First Nations people, so First Nations is our politically correct term in Canada for what are otherwise called Native Americans, Indigenous people, American Indians, et cetera. So, you know, but, you know, obviously a huge percentage of those people are in interracial marriages or relationships. There aren't that many Indigenous people around because due to genocide. So a lot of them are Indigenous people married to white women, or white men to Indigenous women. Like it's very common. And, you know, one of the main responses those people got from their families was, oh, why would you choose to be with someone who's non-white when you could be with someone who's white? You know, I just don't understand. I mean, and this is just racism. It's not that they don't understand. They're choosing to not understand. And I know, depending on where you live, there are people who would be like this. If you're a white person getting married to a black person, or a black person getting married to if you're crossing any of these, you know, more or less imaginary boundaries between ethnic and racial groups. And of course, what's really going on there is a refusal to evaluate this person as a unique human being. You know, now, you know, I just don't believe. I mean, if anyone just watched this one video, the video we're recording right now, you don't think you can see what Melissa likes about me? Like, really? You can't imagine what the redeeming qualities are that I have that other men don't have just within this one conversation? Really? even if I were ugly, even if I were 100 pounds fatter than I am or something, or even if you subjectively feel I'm ugly, you can tell what the qualities are that she responds to, or you can tell what some of them are. Admittedly, you can't tell, but you can see enough about what makes this person, uniquely appealing or important to her, where even if she had an aversion to dating someone who was 10 years older than her, and I'm more than 10 years older, but even if you had some aversion to that, in theory, that would overcome that aversion. And a lot of people do. A lot of people have an aversion to marrying someone from a different culture or a different ethnic group, but this particular person has redeeming qualities that are more important than that. Again, my point being, they may be racist themselves, they may be prejudiced themselves, or they may just have personal preferences that go against the particular pairing. But there's some quality this person has that's much more important. So I want to respond. This is a really short comment, but Scarface comments. Shout out to Scarface. Is being sexy important to you? So the point here is the person you're pursuing, the person you're going to fall in love with. Is it important to you that they're sexy? So look, it's really easy to talk about this stuff as if we design the person we're going to fall in love with on a chalkboard, as if you're like, oh, well, this is the kind of person I want. And then they materialize. And by the way, a lot of religious groups and like new age cult groups, they make that out to be the case. Oh, ask the universe for what you want in a partner, visualize what you want in a partner, and then manifest them.
Manifest the partner.
There's a lot. People pay money for that bullshit. People want to live that lie. That's a fantasy people really act out. You know what I mean? So the shout out to ODS. Thanks, Oliver. Don't try to steal Melissa from me, Oliver. That would be an age gap relationship. If Melissa leaves me for Oliver, that would be the age gap going the other way. Anyway, okay, so look, my ex-wife, when I met her, was a European woman enrolled in a PhD program at a European university doing research in Asia. Okay. So I was sexually involved with a woman immediately before her. It would be an exaggeration to say she was my girlfriend. Like it was kind of like the try and see stage, we spent some time together and stuff. I feel it would be an exaggeration to say that she was an ex-girlfriend of mine, but we did sleep in the same bed a couple times. The woman I was involved with immediately before my ex-wife was a white European PhD candidate doing research for her PhD at a European university in China, like on a research trip. Now, anyone could look at that and say, "Oh, well, that's your type," or "That's what you could impose all kinds of analytical frameworks onto that." No, I don't work from a chalkboard. I didn't write down what I'm looking for. Certain age, certain height, certain, you must be getting a PhD. No. Like the point is, who am I going to date? Who am I going to try to fall in love with? Or who's going to fall in love with me? What's available to me? Now, they're two totally different women in many ways, but there are some striking similarities. And we ended up meeting her. And, it was upsetting for my ex-wife. Obviously, we weren't married yet then. It was at the beginning of our relationship. We were just in romance. But it was upsetting for her to meet someone who, seemed to be in love with me. I mean, however deep or shallow it was, there's still some feelings there, and to see this other woman who was kind of in the same position she was in life. And you know what I mean? And this, you could see the kind of paths, parting ways here. So look, either one of those women, did I choose them because they were sexy? No. Did I choose them over other women because they were sexy? No. Were they the most beautiful or the most sexy women available to me at that time? No. Look, I could tell you about women who were taking a swing at me in those same few months, kind of thing, who were gorgeous, who were much better looking, objectively and subjectively. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Like what I want is to have a meaningful life, and I'm looking for women who can share that meaningful life with me, and a certain kind of dignity, a certain kind of relationship together. You know what I mean? A certain kind of cooperation, to put it bluntly, in the relationship, right? And that is way more important to me than how sexy someone is, right? Now, I mean, Melissa knows this. This is a funny story. I think I've never told this on on YouTube before. It's a very short story. There were several really beautiful women pursuing me at the time. Melissa first was coming into my life, so we didn't have any commitment yet. But one of them was a professional model at that time. She wasn't a retired model. She was doing modeling at that time, and that included swimsuit modeling. And she did not do pornography, but she did modeling that was showing off her body. I think also like four fashion magazines. She did modeling where she was wearing lingerie, like to advertise the lingerie, right? And I'll remember this rest of my life. That was my father was literally on his deathbed, and I was trying to get along with him because my father and I did not have that great a relationship. What are you going to talk about? My father was a very shallow guy, and I remember I chit-chatted with my father about it. He's literally lying down to die, and he died only a couple weeks later. Really, this is his last couple weeks of life.
Wow.
And I remember sending my father pictures of maybe the three women who were kind of front runners. It's like, well, there are three different women who were talking to me. And, at that time, it wasn't clear when I would meet or if I would meet Melissa. But like, it seemed reasonable at that time to suppose like maybe I was going to meet one of these women like 6 months or 3 months down the road. Like, it's just not that easy to arrange meeting people flying around the world. Anyway, and I sent some of the pictures to my father of who these women were as time what was going on in my life that way. And my father was like, oh, choose the lingerie model. I was like, the swimsuit model. No. Don't be hasty. You'll regret this later. You know what I mean? So, now, that woman, I am not saying she was only sexy. I'm not saying that's her only redeeming. I could say all kinds of positive things about her otherwise. But, at every stage of my life, I could say to you, no, that's not the most important factor. And there have been times when I didn't even feel it was in the top 10, like when I felt it was such a low priority. And a part of the reason why this video is as philosophically nuanced as it is that I feel conflicted about that, and I think there's some other person could look at my life and say, I'm living completely the wrong way for that reason. Right. But, what I am pursuing is not a beautiful woman, and it's not the most beautiful woman. And I'm not even pursuing sexual gratification, and I'm not pursuing sex. I'm pursuing a meaningful life. And if there is a woman who can be a part of really leading a meaningful life with me, right, then I want that woman to be with me. And if not, get the fuck out. I don't need you. I'd rather be alone, no matter how beautiful you are, no matter how sexy you are, right? So I was just going to say my self-confidence doesn't come from having an enormous penis. It doesn't come from being great in bed. It doesn't. My self-confidence is I'm leading a meaningful life with or without you. So are you with me or what? That's how I live my life with everybody, And like, there's no way, no matter how good you are at sex, no matter how good you are in bed, no matter how good you are at giving women orgasms, and, admittedly, these are my advantages. Like, no matter how handsome you are or how ugly you are, no matter how tall you are, like, I think most people, they don't realize this because they've never thought it through. No, the most important form of confidence comes from the fact that I'm leading a meaningful life, period. And like at this stage, like now I'm 42. You could talk about when this was true because this can't possibly be true when you're 16 years old. Like you cannot be living a meaningful life on your own terms at 16. I think it's impossible at that stage. Like when it's really possible, whether that's 22 or what, like, maybe for some people it is already at 18 or something, but it's really, when you're young, it's really hard to be living a meaningful life on your own terms because you're still living in your parents' shadow. Like even if financially, even if you're earning your own money, almost everything is just bullshit your parents told you and bullshit your teachers told you. You haven't read that many books. You haven't, like, to really be leading a meaningful life on your own terms. I think it's completely impossible at 16. Exactly when it becomes possible, people, is another story. But whether you've got that at 25 or 35 or whenever you've got it, the most important form of confidence is I know how to lead a meaningful life, and I'm doing it with or without you. I'm doing it with or without money. If I have to work at McDonald's, I'm still me. I'm still living a meaningful life on my terms. I'm not afraid to work at McDonald's. I'm not afraid to join the army. I'm not like, you know what I mean? I go to join the army. I bring my meaningful life with me. You know what I mean? I'm not I'll say this real, because we talked about this from a lot of different perspectives. At this stage of my life, I'm not afraid to do porn. I could do hardcore porn and my self-esteem is not going to suffer. I'm not going to feel like I'm a person of no intellectual substance. You know what I mean? I'm not going to feel like, I just make my living in this crude, vulgar way. Now, if you go into hardcore porn at age 18, right, that's really different, right? Like whatever denigration I have to suffer in my life, I have that confidence of really leading a meaningful life. So like that is the way like I relate to women. And of course, it's on a way lower level of intensity. But in as much as men are going to be my friends or colleagues, right? That's how I relate to men also. By the way, I'm heterosexual. But, like, so there's no seduction there. But like...
No, I'm only friends with sexy guys. Sorry.
No. But keeping it all the way real, you can have a heterosexual friendship, a totally non-sexual friendship, right? But where you're needy, where one person is needy to do, you know what I mean? And of course you can have a sexual relationship with it, but it's like, no, bro, like I'm leading this boat. You want in or not? You with me or what? You know what I mean? I don't need you. Like, I don't need you, bitch. I don't need you, bro. Like whatever, man. That's it. So that's also, yeah. Now she's been with me for 4.5 years. She knows.
I know. I know it. Yeah, I know it. It's true.
So no, like I know that was a long answer to a one sentence thing, but like, a lot of people would not be able to comprehend just how fucking true that is to me, and in terms of the role of sexuality and attractiveness and sex, in life. And I'm totally willing to sit here and say, maybe I'm wrong and maybe my philosophy wouldn't work for you. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I'm handing down something here like the law of gravity that's true for everyone in all circumstances. You know what I mean? But this is what I know to be true. And these are the rules of the game as I play it. And I take on all the advantages and disadvantages that come with that. Like, okay, if this is the first time you've seen a fucking video on my channel, if you've never heard my voice before, maybe there's some people in the audience, hit thumbs up. We've got 42 people in the audience. We should have 42 thumbs up, bro. Come on, give me the thumbs up some more. If this is the only video you've ever seen in my channel, you know this. I used to live in Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. I could have slept with 100 women just in Thailand. Easily. It would have been no challenge for me to sleep with 100 women when I was in Thailand. And like, aside from like the girlfriend I brought with me, I slept with zero. Like I had a white Canadian girlfriend I brought with me. I slept with zero, right? So there are a lot of people who will listen to this philosophy and be like, oh yeah, that's really philosophically interesting. Oh gee, that's interesting. And then they will say they would prefer to sleep with 100 hoe bags. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, well, all this profound stuff being taken, they'll take 100, anonymous, shameful one night stands instead, right? But not me, and those dudes who sleep with 100 women, they have to live with a different kind of burden than what I've got. Do you want to jump in at that point? I mean, sorry, there's so many aspects to this.
About there. Yeah. No, I think that's real. That I know you really well now. I mean, I know you better than probably anybody else. And what you say is really true, that you are devoted to living a meaningful life all the time. And if somebody isn't on board, then, I know that sounds very, it can sound kind of harsh, but and like I don't know, I've seen some evidence to the contrary that like you do reach out to people to try to get them on board. Like you want people in your life.
Yeah, like hey, I'm leading a meaningful life. How about you too? Right? Yeah.
It's different when you are like this idea that relationships shouldn't be based on neediness or like I need somebody to be there for me, but that's not how you are. And like people might criticize you for like saying like, oh, like not being the type of guy that will say like to me like, Melissa, I need you, right.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Whereas other guys like really have been like that. Like, Melissa, I need you, or like,
Right. Okay. So look, I think that neediness as a concept that way. Okay. Like there is such a thing as love out of strength, and there's such a thing as love out of weakness, right? And that culture of neediness, that is just taking, love out of weakness and putting it up on this pedestal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good.
As opposed to like, hey, I have the strength, I have the surplus to share with you what I've got to share. I can bring you into my life, and we can both benefit from it, but out of strength, as opposed to out of weakness. Like, oh, what would I do without you, or something.
Like, but a lot of people will criticize you and say like, oh, well, it's your perspective is it's my way or the highway. Like, get on board.
Absolutely. Right. Well, I think smoking cigarettes is a great example, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously there was a sense in which I could have exactly the same relationship with Melissa, but 3 times a day she goes outside to smoke a cigarette. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a sense, you know what I mean? Which you say, and obviously with some other woman or something, like you could say this, like, well, what is the big difference? But sure, there's all kinds of stuff where it's like, no, like these are kind of hard minimum requirements, hard limits. Either you're living a meaningful life my way, or get out.
It's better to have that. Yeah.
Right.
That sort of character, rather than saying, well, I will take whatever I can get, or this kind of attitude of being needy and needing somebody's love and affection and admiration all the time. Like that, you are not that way.
Right.
Like you are somebody who's like, it's not like you are even like compliments. Like a lot of the times you are just like, no, like, I'm not fishing for compliments.
Yes. Right.
This stuff. I'm just talking about my life. I'm just talking about what I've been through. I'm not
sharing what I'm about to share.
Yeah. Right. No. And that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I was just talking to you earlier about this, like, a lot of people live kind of ashamed of their lives and they don't want to talk about it with people. Or if you do have accomplishments in life, or if you do feel like you live a meaningful life and there are things that you do that you're proud of, like talking with other people, the kind of reactions that you get, like, are oftentimes like either out of a sense of a lack in their part, like they lack your kind of confidence, they lack your kind of sense of like drive, like that this is the life that I have, and I'm working towards something, whether or not anybody's with me. Right. A lot of people don't have that, and they might respond in a negative way when you share that.
So you remind me of an idiom that I used to say like 20 years ago, maybe 19, 18 years ago. I remember I said to people, what if you are an Elvis impersonator and you live in a culture where nobody has ever heard of Elvis? Like, you can get on stage at the county fair, you can perform in front of other people, and they have no idea how well or badly you're trying to, imitate or emulate the distinctive sound and style of Elvis. They just know that you're dressed up in strange clothes. You know what I mean? So, obviously what culture you'd have to imagine, remote island in Papua New Guinea or something, because Elvis is so famous, there are very few, but you can at least imagine hypothetically, there's some town somewhere where nobody's seen a picture of Elvis, nobody's heard his music, nobody's whatever, and you are an Elvis impersonator. I can remember saying to people, doing what I do as an intellectual, this is like being the only Elvis impersonator in a town where nobody else has heard of Elvis. So like, I think that's actually, sorry, I haven't said that definitely for more than 10, 15 years. I've never said that, but I used to say that to people face to face. I think that gives a really good sense though of how it's not that I feel unappreciated in a needy or resentful way. You know what I mean? It's not like I need your approval sign. It's like, look, I'm aware that what I'm doing as an art form is something you can't relate to, you can't appreciate, or that you, like the vast majority of people, you can only respond to on this really strange surface level that's irrelevant to the point of the art form. Like, again, people who've never heard of Elvis, they just know like, oh, wow, that's a really strange, outfit he's wearing. Like, he's wearing really strange clothes. And, oh, gee, like there were a lot, like they're kind of peering at the distinctive aspects of this, but they don't know why, and they don't know what the purpose is. And they also maybe don't know the sentiment, the emotional significance of what it is you're doing. So, yeah, that's, I've got to say, honestly, I think if you're not at peace with that, you'll commit suicide. Like, if you live your life wanting approval from people that way, dude, I think I've never said this on the channel, but like, really, I mean this in any walk of life, not just being an artist or a performer. not just being an author or a creative person or a YouTuber. But I think if you are going around expecting the crowd to appreciate your Elvis impersonation, like the distinctive art form you've got that way, and if you've mistaken that for the meaning of life or a meaningful life, that is really going to lead you to suicide. So yeah, I had already committed to this, disciplined but reckless path of being like, look, I'm going to be the best Elvis impersonator in my generation, even if nobody here has heard of Elvis Presley. Yeah. And the reality is, I mean, bringing it back to the topic of this video, women see that and they want to fuck you. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I was gonna say, let's get back to let's get back to talking about
no. But I mean, I think it is true.
Yeah,
and a lot of my other videos about sexuality have talked about that. Some people get it and some people don't, but most people don't. So you guys might remember a couple months ago or something, I talked about, look, if you get out and you start putting on William Shakespeare, it's a great idea. You can steal this idea from me. Say, hey, we're going to do William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar with an all-black cast, and we're going to call it Black Caesar. We're going to do live theater, and then you have all these actors and all these people involved, and you're the director and producer for an all-black cast, reinterpreting William Shakespeare as some kind of political commentary on Donald Trump or something, whatever you're doing with it. Like, I know it may not be obvious to you that this will lead to people falling in love with you and having meaningful friendships with you, also having relationships with you. But yeah, it does. You know what I mean? Like this taking on this kind of ambition and really the pursuit of excellence. Women who don't understand what it is you're doing. They don't understand what the excellence is that you're in pursuit of, but they pick up on those characteristics and they think, hey, they want to have a child with you. They want to raise a child with you. These are the deeper sources of attraction. Like, it's not just you may have a one-night stand, but there are people who are going to be really reacting to you that way. That's my self-centered, advice on that. And somebody else can now write in, some hopeless incel can write in and say, no, that's not true. And they've had some terrible experiences to the contrary. Yeah. So look, the title of the video, I mean, it seems to me that you and I both are kind of at a consensus on this, that love without sex, we won't go quite so far as to say it doesn't exist, right? But like, if you're talking about getting married to someone you find unattractive or repulsive, like what is your conclusion on this? I mean,
you can disagree with me, but I think there are many examples in history and literature and cultural studies. If you look back on many different couples in history that they weren't attracted to each other, but this is relatively new. The fact that everybody has the freedom to choose their partner based off of their sexual attraction to that person. And I remember just recently you recorded a video where, talking about just having pride in being a housewife or something like, or men that will be proud to this kind of pride and just like the taking on the role of being a wife or a husband. Like, some people might live for that, but living, I think generally the dream is, for a lot of people, is to be with somebody that they're sexually attracted to. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, even that, it's kind of tragic because everybody gets old, and like, even if you think that you'll always be attracted to the person that you're with, right? Everybody gets old, or some people might.
But look, so we have talked about this before, but like, if I am struck by a bolt of lightning and then I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, you would still have the memory of 4.5 years of amazing sex in this relationship. Yeah. And look, I've got to say the same. Melissa a bolt of lightning might not be a good example, but some bizarre and unlikely accident could make her paralyzed from the waist down or something, right? And then the sexual aspect of our relationship disappears. But I would have forever the memory of the 4.5 years of really great sex before that. That's totally different from being in a relationship with someone you never were attracted to, you never had the great sex with. You know what I mean? And we've talked about it. I mean, we're not planning to get struck by a bolt of lightning, but I think for both of course we can make it work. Of course, there's so much else besides sex in this relationship that makes it work, but that's still not the same as committing to, love without sex. you know.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just say this, guys. I think it is, Nacho says, don't jinx yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for the comments, guys. I mean, you know, if it's on topic, I'm happy to. No, look, I think it's very rare that it's useful to talk about a perfect world, what we would do in a perfect world, you know, what you do under optimal conditions. But sometimes it's worth talking about, you know, to compare to the compromises people make and what's pragmatically possible. Sometimes it's worth talking about. Now, you know, for the woman who wrote in asking for help in the first place, I think it's actually really important to say, look, in a perfect world, you would just be friends with this guy. And based on my knowledge, I don't know that much. We had a few more messages back and forth talking about the details. But based on my understanding of the situation, you fucked up. Because you fucked up what could have been a good friendship and turned it into a horrible sexual relationship. And sorry to take it that far, but like, you know, that's what it is. This is a bad sexual relationship. This is a horrible sexual relationship. And apparently it's not that bad for the guy. Apparently it's just that bad for the woman. But, you know, it could be it's also bad for him. Like based on, because there were some more details about the actual sex in this relationship. I got to be real with you. It does not sound to me like it's good for him either. I don't know what his perspective is, but like objectively, based on what you told me about the actual sex in this relationship, you know, it's bad for you. It is at least not great for him. It could be mediocre to bad for him also. And he may be a guy for whatever reason. That's not his priority. That's not definitive for him. But I think in this case, we have to hold up the perfect world scenario and say, look, in a perfect world, you would just be friends. And that itself, when you hold that up to then the reality you're stepping into, no. From my perspective, it's open and shut. You would be better off now just completely ending this relationship, even if it involves terrible hardship for both of you. I think you'd be better off ending this relationship, even if you are then celibate for the rest of your life. If there is no next relationship, I'm being real with you. That's how I feel about it. I would rather be alone. I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life than be in a bad relationship. And guys, I got divorced. Like I was married to someone legally, and she was totally in love with me. I mean, she's obsessively in love with me. I was married to someone who was obsessively in love with me. And it's like, I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than wake up with this person and deal with this person. Like it was that bad. It was a horrible relationship for me. You know what I mean? You get to that point where it's like, look, I don't know what the consequences are. You know, however bad the consequences are, this is the decision I have to make. Now that's a lot harder because you get into the details of what my situation was and what it was a tremendous sacrifice. A tremendous, getting divorced was inconvenient to say the least, and it's had knock-on effects, including financial costs, just having to employ so many lawyers. It's messed up my life in a lot of ways. But bro, I never regret it. Every day I wake up and I am so glad that I do not have to put up with that woman, that I do not have to endure her abuse for one more day in my life or one more minute in my life. You know what I mean? I am so glad to have that woman out of my life. You know what I mean? That all of the terrible costs involved, of course I'm happy to endure them. I'm just so happy I got divorced. Right. So look, I got to say, from my perspective, that's completely clear. I don't know, babe, you mentioned the historical fact that in many cultures for many centuries, people regarded marriage instead as a matter of duty, matter of honor, and a matter of economic convenience. I mean, there was money involved. But do you feel that's a counterweight to what I'm saying? Look, how do you take it wherever you want to take it? But
I think those are examples of love without sex.
Yeah. Right.
I guess, or sex without love.
Right.
Probably sex without love in that situation. But no, I think what you said earlier, where somebody might ask, is a different topic, but where somebody might ask, why did you marry a white man? Or why did you marry a Native person? Like some people who are directly racist about this. This has in some ways been directed toward me, in this relationship. Like,
Because I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
right. But so I guess for some,
I forget that from the perspective of millions of people, I'm considered non-white. I forget that sometimes. And we'll go on.
For some people, maybe that is their primary goal. They like you said, they work from a chalkboard. They're looking for somebody who is from their cultural background, their race, and a whole country, like a whole, like, millions and millions, maybe even perhaps a billion people, they still are tied to this system of arranged marriage, like in a sense, those sometimes you do get a choice, but it's still, this is still fairly common in the world, that people aren't choosing the person that they want to be with.
Right. But I mean, look, there are 2 or 3 very simple criteria to hold up to that. Okay. Getting married to someone where your relationship is going to be love without sex, or sex without love, or both. This kind of bet. Okay. It's one thing to say that is a fate worse than death. Some people would take it that far. Okay. It's another thing to say that is a fate worse than marrying someone else. You still got a choice. You could marry some other dude, or, you know what I mean? You could just pursue another, which is a really low criterion. Oh, well, that's worse. Okay. And then there is, that is a fate worse than celibacy, worse than being alone. Like, what's so bad about being alone? Different people feel about this different ways. But, after I broke up with my ex-wife, I was not in a hurry to get into a new relationship. And I did. I had all kinds of different women after me, and when I was not pursuing them at all. It's each woman was unique. It's a different story in every case. I can't generalize about it. But, I think also you have to be at peace with, if I turn this person down, maybe I'm never going to find love. Maybe I'm never going to find a relationship that works for me in all these different ways, whether sexually, intellectually, economically, so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you don't have to take it as far as claiming this is a fate worse than death. And there's another dude involved here. There's the woman, and there's the dude who wants to marry her and have kids with her, right? He could marry someone who is attracted to him. He could marry someone who really enjoys having sex with him. He could marry someone he does have that chemistry and does have that compatibility with. There's no reason to assume that he is going to live in celibacy for the rest of his life if you break off this relationship. Now, again, I think it's worth saying that it's still the right thing to do. If you break up with him and he never finds another woman he's in love with, he never gets married, you got to say, look, I'm still doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. That goes back to something that you were talking about earlier. Definitely. Like, you might feel that it is on you, like that this is, if you break up with this person,
right,
like to the original person who wrote in, like
it's your problem.
It would be horrible for you if you broke up with him because of this, one issue that you have in the relationship. But if this is the issue, and you don't see that there's something that can change fundamentally about this repulsion to your partner, then yeah, I do think it's kind of your responsibility. And I like your view of feminism, and I embrace it more and more as I get older, because I can look back at different times in my life when I should have seen myself as rather than the passenger seat in my life, I am the driver in my life. Like, I am the person that's making these decisions. When at the time it felt like I was just
you were just a
helpless.
Witness.
Yeah, I was just a witness to this thing happening to me. So yeah, that really needs to be a cultural shift in the lives of women, because women do have the same rights as men. Like, we have the same capabilities and intellectual potential as men, and also the responsibility has to lie with us too. So, like, when you say that this woman fucked up by starting this relationship when she wasn't attracted to them, like, I feel that I've freaking been there. It's terrible. And like, you feel like once you've gotten to this stage, and once you have gotten far enough, it's like, what do I do now? And you have to make these really hard decisions. And yeah, it can lead to heartbreak.
So I am just going to say this to kind of affirm our conclusions here, but I think it's an important affirmation of, or extension of, these conclusions, which is that I think, like what you and I have just said at the end of this discussion, I think it's still true, and it is neither more nor less true if you're talking about an open relationship, if you're talking about polygamy, polyandry, polyamory, whatever you want to say. Because, right, Some people would say that it's okay to have this kind of loveless or sexless marriage because you can supplement it with other partners. And I feel like, no, that makes it worse. Because, okay, it's one thing to be in a relationship where you are in love, you are attracted to the person, you do have great sex with that person. And then you also, once in a while, invite someone else into the bedroom, whether that's for 3 ways and 4 ways or, or whatever. You go and meet up with them. When you have a positive sexual connection with your husband or wife, and then you supplement that with some kind of polyamory or open relationship, okay, that is totally night and day different from being in a relationship where you're not attracted to the person.
Right.
You like all these problems we just talked about.
Right.
You're not sexually compatible, and then you're compensating by having affairs or relationships with people you do have that connection with. Like, to me, that's like the worst nightmare, and I think that's bad for everybody. Like, I think that's bad for all of the partners in the constellation.
Well, yeah.
So, okay, yeah, but I feel like it's the same conclusion, but even worse if we're going to include open relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say, I used to find it funny because we would talk about like different political leaders, like, for example, Napoleon, right?
Yeah.
He was married.
Yes.
Right. But in effect, like, you used to say things like, "Oh, well, they had a swinging relationship or something,"
right?
Or they had an open relationship because
the original
open
relationship,
sex with prostitutes. Yeah. That is like the original.
Just other women too. Yeah, he was sleeping with. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not all of them are prostitutes, but
But also, there was somebody else recently. Yes, you're talking about so Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh yeah, right.
Well, not only was he like maybe having an affair with somebody that he met at a party, but like Lee Harvey Oswald's wife, Marina, like she was having an affair with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So like this happens way more than you might think, and like historical examples, like you like Pol Pot, you told me about like, Ho Chi Minh.
Oh yeah, right.
About his sex life.
Look,
I don't know about Pol Pot. But,
look, before we invented these fancy terms like polyamory and open relationship, there always was quote unquote screwing around. I mean, there always was screwing around, and there always were couples that were relaxed about it. I mean, in French culture, especially, having other partners under some circumstances or whatever. Yes. This has always existed. But
yes, it has always existed, and it's different. I agree with you. It's completely different if you're in a relationship with somebody and it's like ethical non-monogamy, where you're all consenting partners of this, versus you're hiding something, you're making it secretive, and also, you're not satisfied with the first relationship, like whether it's these historical examples or just any person, any couple you might see on the street, like you don't know what their story is, but affairs are so common and because of this,
and we will never know how common they are.
Yeah. I know, you will never know.
In any culture, even the most permissive culture, people can't be honest about it. So I knew a guy in Toronto. So this was in my last year of high school, and I forget if he had failed 1 grade or 2 grades, but he was older. So by the way, at that time in Canada, high school was 5 years long, not 4 years long. So I was already a year older than what you today would think about as last year of high school. Everyone was, because the system was different. And then this guy I knew, I forget if he was 1 or 2 years older, because he had in effect failed grades. It wasn't his fault. His parents moved around, whatever. He had missed some years and had to make them up afterwards. So he was more of a college age guy. But I remember he described to me going to a house party. That time in Toronto, house parties were a lot of the thing. And this girl who had a boyfriend taking him outside the door of the party. The party was inside an apartment. This was the hallway in the apartment building. And she had sex with him leaning against the front door of the apartment while having her hand on the doorknob so that her boyfriend on the other side wouldn't open the door. She was cheating on her boyfriend at the house party. And this was not the only story or experience he had this way. During the time I knew him, I knew him for 1 year. And he was a bit of a notorious character. I mean, other people might remember him. But he also described to me a girl who arrived at a bar with her boyfriend. She was there to drink and, I don't know, go dancing with her boyfriend. And he went upstairs and had sex with her at the nightclub while her boyfriend was waiting for her. She told her boyfriend she was going to the bathroom. And they went and had sex upstairs. I knew the bar. I knew the layout of that bar. It's a place I've been. It was a bar and live music venue. And, you know, this guy, he had a number of these experiences already as quite a young man. I don't know, 10. I mean, he hadn't had 100 experiences like this, but he really knew the extent to which married women and women in committed boyfriend-girlfriend relationships were willing to cheat, you know, without really knowing the guy, without like pretty much just based on a first impression. And I have heard, I mean, it's mostly I've heard African-American celebrities talking about this, guys who are rappers or somehow involved in the hip hop African-American world. But, you know, yes, you know, the capacity of people to cheat, that's something that very few people are honest about. Very few people are willing to reflect on. Very few people are willing to talk about in their own lives.
Oh, yeah.
And then when they are honest, you can imagine a lot of people respond to that being like, oh, you're making that up or something. Or, oh, you know, there must be something else to the story. It must be that there was money involved. Like you paid the person this. It's like, no, you have to, you know, and, you know, sorry, I won't say, but, you know, not a big deal, but it's always stayed with me that, you know, like when I was in Cambodia, so I'll just tell this one particular anecdote, but you can imagine this is an anecdote that had parallels at other times in Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. I remember there was this one bank I went to again. I was a regular at the bank. And on the last day I went to the bank, I went to close my account because I was leaving. I said, well, look, I got to close the account, take the money out of it. I was giving up on living in Cambodia. And all the girls working at the bank suddenly freaked out. They had obviously been talking about me for weeks or months or a year or something. They'd all been talking about like, oh, you should flirt with him. You should ask him out on a date. Like it was revealed. There was this sudden flurry of activity because they realized this was their last chance to finally do it, to ask me on a date. So you can imagine I'm kind of saying like, I don't experience jealousy and I don't have ego attached to this. Like, yeah, well, you know, sour grapes, you missed your chance. But it was a funny story at the time that I'm standing there trying to close my bank account. And all of a sudden there's this flurry of activity amongst the all-female staff of this bank who are trying to take their last swing at bat. And none of them had flirted with me before. Like I'd just gone in to get money, you know, it was normal banking. I didn't have any complex conversations with any of these women. And I remember then I went back to my apartment building and a bunch of the guys were standing around. It's not worth explaining, but why I chit-chatted with these guys. And I was like, well, they all knew I was leaving Cambodia. I was like, well, I just went to the bank for the last time. And, you know, basically the women working at the bank, they showed their cards. They were all like, you know, trying to get me, you know. So I was just telling it as a funny story. But for me, there's really no ego involved. And I remember the response from one of the guys. He was a white man married to a Cambodian woman. He was like, oh, no, that's just because they know how much money is in your bank account. You know, of course, it's like, dude, I've been living on $300 a month. Like I've been living in poverty. Yeah. Like, do you have any idea how little money I make, even compared to Cambodian people? Like I wasn't, it's not only I am not rich by Canadian standards, I was not rich by Cambodians. Like, are you, you know, so I just say like, when you're honest about this stuff, when you really talk about it, again, we were talking about cheating specifically and the way in which people compensate for these things and their motivations and so on. You know, there is this tremendous human capacity. I mean, now this guy's experience in life, I could say more describing him. His experience largely is either prostitution or he's had a long string of relationships with Asian women that resemble prostitution. Like it's, you know, he's paying for things in their lives and they're sleeping with him. Like, you know, that's his experience. And he's trying to foist his framework of analysis onto my experience. He's trying to force, you know, my experience in life to resemble his own, which it doesn't at all, you know. But yeah, you know, you know, this sounds trite, but it's really serious. You can never compensate for something lacking in one relationship with another relationship. You know, that's true of coworkers, that's true of colleagues, that's true of friends, and it's true of your sexual relationship, like your marriage or your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it is. Like, okay, so like, let's keep it all the way up. This is really easy for people to understand. If I am in love with, and I am sleeping with someone who is not smart enough for me, like they can't have intellectual discussions the way I want to have, I can never compensate for that by having a friend, let's just say a male friend, a heterosexual male friend, who is intellectual enough, who has the decision. Never, never. One does not compensate for the other. Like the black stain in your life of waking up in the bedroom and eating breakfast every day with someone who can't relate to you intellectually will never be compensated for by a male friend you have who does have that intellectual compatibility with you, who isn't. Never, never. And like, sorry, I'm preaching to you because a lot of you motherfuckers are kidding yourself, but a lot of you. And people get married and they don't even have a fucking language in common. You marry a Russian chick because she's hot. You marry a woman from Vietnam because she's hot. And like, even if she's intelligent in some sense, you have no common language. Like, you have no intellectual compatibility. Like, even if she's intelligent in some way, like she can do math or something, but you know, she's not part. It will never compensate for that. So like, to me, it really is the same thing to say, like, if you have a husband or you have a wife and you don't have an emotional connection, you don't have a sexual connection, whether that's in terms of attraction or actual sex, actual orgasms, you can never compensate for that by getting it elsewhere. You know what I mean? Never. And like, I think it only makes it worse to try to compensate for it. And, you know, so again, I think the intellectual thing is easier for people to visualize. Like, if you haven't been through any of this shit, like, you know, let's say you're a novelist, you're writing novels, and you marry this bimbo who can't even read that language, can't relate to what you're going through as an intellectual and as a creative artist, or the research you're doing and stuff. The fact that you have friends, maybe you have friends who are also novelists, who are also in the publishing industry or something, and they are reading your work and they are interested in what's going on, and they're engaged and they're asking you questions. That only makes it worse. That's only going to make it more intolerable that you wake up every day and have breakfast with someone who can't appreciate that. You know, the level of resentment, you know, like it makes it worse, you know, not better. So like, what I'm saying is compensation is not compensation. And then again, like, it's hard to visualize. Okay, let's say you have a loveless marriage, a sexless marriage, an orgasmless marriage, or someone you're not attracted to at all. And then there is somebody else you're going and meeting up with, and you do have that chemistry and you do relate that way.
Right.
Whoa. You know, to me, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same pattern as with the compensating for the intellectual deficit. But yeah, my point is compensation is not compensation, you know? Yeah.
Compensation is not compensation. Yeah.
Compensation is exacerbation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, that's totally different. So I just want to say explicitly, Melissa is intelligent enough to be with me. She is. That doesn't mean it's effortless for her.
No, right. It takes effort to.
Right.
I know that I can.
Right.
Like, I know that I can talk to you about these
right.
philosophical issues. It's just, it's taken effort, which a lot of people don't put into their intellectual life and into their relationships, you know, like, and.
But like, we had lunch with a university professor the other day. Now, it was a male university professor, but imagine that was a female university professor. He or she would never be intelligent enough to be with me. You know what I mean? Like, so I just say there's a concept of enough. Like, you can be intelligent enough. Doesn't mean it's no effort for her. She has to actually read books. You know what I mean? She has to make an effort. But when you make that effort, it's enough. I mean, you know, come on. There are so many people where it's, you know, you lead a horse to water. It doesn't matter. They can read the same books you've read, and it's never going to work. They're never going to be intelligent.
No, I mean, look, I mean, we've talked frankly about this, that we're at different intellectual levels.
Right.
It makes sense. We have a lot of different experiences, and you're 14 years older than me. You know, there are a lot of things.
Right. But there's the concept of enough.
But I want to,
Right.
And over time, I've become like a lot more excited about like learning and wanting to have this relationship with you. And it's like, it's not something that like it's something that you have to continue to work on. And it's something that like, I'm looking forward to, because I do want to be like that. I do want to be enriching that part of your life as well. Like, I don't want to just be somebody that you have sex with, somebody that you like watch a movie with. Like, that's that's
a lot of relationships.
I agree. A lot of people, their relationships are just like, okay, we have sex, we eat dinner together, and we have a kid together, and that's like that's our relationship. Like, we watch TV together.
Right.
we play video games. That's our relationship. Like we consume the same media, right? So like, but in a different way, like if you're a creative, if you're trying to create something, like, you know, it could be just having the respect for the other person's creative potential, respect for the person, what they're trying to do in life. Like a lot of people just, like you said, I know it's an imperfect comparison. Somebody said, who are you impersonating? With this idea of like, you know, being an Elvis
incomprehension or something,
but
right?
The younger generation, or like anybody, like you could be in a culture where people don't even know who Elvis is. I don't know where in the world nobody would know who Elvis is, but it's possible. Like you could be an impersonator of Elvis somewhere in the world where people just don't get it, right? So, but
when you come home to your wife, your wife has to understand your act. She has to understand your music or whatever it is. Oh,
sweetie,
your wife has to get you. Yes, right.
You impersonate Elvis. I have an appreciation.
Right. But what if your wife doesn't get you? What if your wife hates Elvis or has never heard of Elvis? Your wife doesn't understand, but you're cheating on her with a woman who does. So that's screwed up. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then you talk to the person who appreciates Elvis impersonation and be like, oh, my wife just doesn't understand.
Right.
Well, then why are you with her? You know, like a lot of people like they are
and I think you'd even be better off alone. Maybe you can't be with someone else, but maybe you can be alone. Maybe you can have your own meaningful life on your own terms, you know, with its own dignity. But I would just say, look, like the premise of having a working open relationship or polyamorous relationship, and maybe 99% of people this is impossible for, maybe it's only 89, maybe it's only 79, but like for a lot of people this is totally impossible. But it's got to be, I have a positive intellectual relationship with my wife or with my husband, and I still have more positivity that I can share with someone else. I have a positive emotional connection with my wife, with my husband. And then I have more positivity that I can share with someone else, you know, and you have more sexual energy or whatever, you know, whatever wants to say, more sexual positivity. That's a good way to put it, actually. Really, I know it sounds corny, but like sexual positivity is a good way to say, and then you can share that with someone else. It's not that you're in mourning for the death of your relationship or in mourning for how bad your sex life was with your husband, and you're compensating with someone else. So, you know, I think that like all the same issues with a closed marriage, the monogamous marriage, they're just repeated, but like on another level of like danger. When you got more people involved. And more propensity for self-destruction and people getting hurt and so on.
But it's great that you have this self-knowledge, you have this self-reflection. Like you have stated to me, and probably you've talked about it in YouTube videos, but that like you have lived where you've wanted to live. Like you don't live with this kind of sense. Sorry, I'm not saying this to flatter you. I'm saying this is like a reflection on this, that like a lot of people do live their lives feeling like they never went out there and tried to get something. It's super shallow that the one thing that I did in my life that I find extraordinary is that I flew to China to meet Aizal. I mean, like
but it worked. It changed your life forever.
I didn't fly to Cambodia to do humanitarian. I didn't fly to China to do humanitarian work. Okay, I flew to China to meet Aizal, which you could say is a shallow sexual desire that I had.
But it led to a lot of non-shallow things, though.
Yes, And it was kind of a shame that a lot of people that I tried to share these things with just didn't care. Like, and they would have rather me, just stayed in this kind of life of mediocrity. Like it's not easy for people who haven't done something like that. They find they were really going out and pursuing some passion that they found meaningful at a certain time. That kind of thing. Like, if you have that on your own, that's what I find. That's what I want to get back to. Like that you're finding that on your own. Like you don't need somebody else to bring that into your life, and that's a wonderful thing. But a lot of people don't have that, and they hope that a relationship will be that thing.
Right. So this is interesting, because I felt like on a deep level, there's something implicit that you're saying here. That it's not explicit at all, but I'm now going to say it explicitly. And it comes back to the question we're answering from a longtime viewer. Yeah. Okay. Why the fuck do you need to be married at all? Right? Like just really straight up, really direct. Like what is the assumption that you need to be in a relationship at all? Because if this dude doesn't fuck you, if this dude doesn't give you orgasms, if you're not in love with him on that level, right? Why are we even having this fucking conversation? You know what I mean? Like for real. And like sometimes there are answers that people don't want to be honest about. Sometimes it's economic. It's, hey, this dude pays my rent. This dude financially makes my whole life possible. If you break up with him, you'll be for the man too, right?
Sure, yeah.
You can talk to guys who are like, hey, this woman does my laundry. Like, even if it's not direct, this woman makes my life possible in all these ways. They don't want the inconvenience. But like, I do think, like, on a really deep level, you got to face up to what the fuck is the point of having a relationship. Because like you're talking, Melissa is quite correctly talking about daring and risk. But what are you daring? Like, the fundamental dare, the fundamental risk is being alone.
Right.
Now, are you such a piece of shit? Are you such a terrible person that you would feel bad about yourself being alone? I'm not. I'm completely happy being alone. And again, if Melissa gets hit by a bolt of lightning or something, like, like there's a sense in which my life wouldn't change that much. I'm going to live. She knows that. Like, if she suddenly dies, an airplane crash or something, like, she can imagine very well what the rest of my life would be like. And I don't feel some need to be with, like, I really don't care. I think that fear of being alone, it's actually a really profound form of low self-esteem. What do you need other people for? What do you want other people? What's the point of a relationship? Now, honestly, and obviously, part of it is to have orgasms. Part of it is to feel like you're in love, is to appreciate someone and be appreciated by someone. And it's someone you're attracted to, and it's someone you have all these intellectual and emotional components. Of course, but like, if you're writing to me saying that you have Gnostic certainty, that's Gnostic spelled G-N-O, by the way, Gnostic certainty, this is something it's not something you doubt, it's not something you're uncertain about. You've got 12 months of experience with this guy. It's different if it's the first 2 weeks. You're like, well, maybe, okay, then you don't have Gnostic certainty. You have Gnostic certainty of what this relationship is and what this relationship is not. So what the fuck is the point? Why would there even be any question? And I do think I'm not reading your mind. The person who sent in this particular question, this may not be the reason at all. But for a lot of people, it's going to be that fear of being alone. It's not daring. It's not taking that risk. And it's not seeing your own life as something meaningful that doesn't rely on any man, that doesn't rely on any woman, and something that's all on you and it's all your own responsibility and doesn't have anything to do with whether you have kids or not. It doesn't have anything to do with whether you're rich or poor. You can work at McDonald's. You can live in a one-bedroom apartment. Like, there is a level at which, if you're actually starving to death, that's different. But within the spectrum of moderate poverty, like, that doesn't change your ability to have a meaningful life. You can get books for free on the internet. You can get them at the library. You don't have to own a bookshelf. I've gone for many years without owning a table or a bookshelf and being a real intellectual. Like, whatever it is you're going to do. Yeah, I do think, like, on a really deep level, there's this question of, like, how can this even be a question? And to me, that is, to quote my famous catchphrase, that's deep and it's real at the same damn time.